Right, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PiXL Drone Show, the podcast where we talk to industry professionals about how they use drones in their day-to-day work. And your hosts for today are Kara Murphy, Greg Reverdio, and myself, Haye Castello. And as our guest, we have Logan Noess today. Logan has a company called Vertex Unmanned Systems, and they're based in Minnesota. And basically, they cater drones and drone services to all kinds of different customers, mostly commercial customers in the utility space, renewable survey mapping, and public safety. And he represents a number of brands. So obviously, he has DJI drones, but also Autel, FreeFly. And later on in this conversation, we'll be talking more specifically about the different kind of drones and how they're best used for the different kind of work that's out there. Logan, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was all short notice. We're trying to record all these shows before the upcoming holiday season, and Logan was able to make himself available at the last minute, which we greatly appreciate. Logan, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in drones and where you got started with flying unmanned aircraft?
Yeah, so I guess it started a long time ago, back when I was 12 or 13 years old. My dad works for the airlines, and he wanted to do something with me, and we went out to the RC airfield and started flying airplanes with some of his coworkers. So I started flying RC airplanes back in 2003, 2004. Got into RC helicopters a little bit. And then when I went to college, I started getting into the drone side of things when flight computers started becoming much better. In college, I remember we purchased one of the first the PiXL flight computers, so we got to play with some of that when I was in college. And then I kind of dropped out of college to start building drones for other people that wanted to use it in industry. So that was kind of how I got started with on the commercial side of things.
So you'll have to forgive me. I come from Silicon Valley, and so what I would ask is, what is your elevator pitch for Vertex Solutions? What do you offer?
So here at Vertex, we're kind of a solutions provider that put together a complete solution for our customer. Instead of just selling you like a DJI Phantom, we actually consult with the customer on what it is that they're trying to accomplish. So our big motto is like, people don't actually want to buy drones. They want to buy a tool to work on their solution for their customers and to be able to drive revenue for them. So we put together that tool for them, everything they need, do the training, any sort of that thing that they need for getting that done. And that's kind of what we provide here.
So your customers are who? Who do you go after?
So our main customers are like engineering companies. Who else? Service providers that just want to provide the drone service to other people. We got a lot of survey companies, power companies, that sort of thing that want to use these to drive revenue for their customer base. So
that makes sense.
And are most of your customers, are they like local in Minnesota, or is it all throughout the US or even international perhaps? Or
we have some international customers, not many. We do have some more local customers that have a global presence. So a lot of their technology is here in the Midwest, and they ship out the solutions that we provide them around the world. And that really lets them control it here locally and then be able to scale that across all their offices.
You're not too far from Airviews, are you?
No, they're right downtown Minneapolis. So
yeah.
drive there.
Yeah, and I was just thinking of that as you were talking about Minnesota. I thought, yeah, the people from Airviews, some of my friends live over there. So where do most of your business referrals come from? Do you think they come from, did people see you on LinkedIn? Is it word of mouth? Do you advertise on Google? Where would you say you get most of your business?
Most of it's word of mouth. Our advertising budget is basically zero, so we don't spend hardly any money on advertising at all. We do, I'm on Facebook quite a bit, which you guys have probably seen on there, but that's about it. So,
right.
So at the moment, what's the trend? What do you see as the gear that's kind of in high demand?
Right now, everybody wants to figure out how to do LIDAR. It's really been the question that we get from most companies, is how do they implement these LIDAR solutions? You know, what's the difference between a $10,000 LIDAR and a $200,000 LIDAR? and where's the benefits? Like, do I actually need to spend $200,000 in order to get the job done, or can I spend something a little bit less and still get that quality data that we need?
So what is the difference between a $10,000 LiDAR and $100,000 LiDAR? 90,000, right?
A lot of times, a lot of times the cost difference is in the laser itself, the precision of that laser. So you have accuracy and precision. The entire system has an accuracy, and then the laser has an accuracy as well, and a precision. But the more precise the laser is, the more expensive it's going to be. So like your Livox Avias that are what's in DJI's L1, what's on the Rock Robotics system, what's on the Phoenix Recon A, that type of laser, the laser itself is only, $1,000, $2,000. It's a very inexpensive laser, but it's great to build another system around it and keep that cost low for somebody who's just trying to do like maybe a topographic map, or do a rough power line scan that they don't need that precision of, 1 to 2 centimeters, 5 to 10 centimeters is just fine. Where you really start getting into that higher end system, so you start going into Velodynes are kind of the mid range, and then Regals are kind of your top end laser system. When you do that, those Regal lasers are quite expensive, but their precision is down to 1 to 2 centimeters, and that comes into play when you need to do like curb and gutter work, things where you need to see very fine details and need that scan speed and that precision out of a laser.
So just for perhaps some of our listeners who might not know exactly what LiDAR is all about, can you maybe take a step back and explain a little bit about what LiDAR is and the range of different applications, like the base price of LiDAR systems to the top end that you just mentioned, so we kind of get a little bit of a background?
Sure. So LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. So it's similar to radar, which is basically radio waves, but LiDAR is light detection. So it is an active sensor. It's shooting a pulse of laser and hitting a target and returning that, and it's measuring what's called time of flight. And so we know the speed of light, we know how long it took for that laser beam to get there and return, and then they can actually get a distance off of that. And then they know the exact position of that, usually it's a spinning mirror or a spinning laser. They know the exact position of that laser, and they're able to coordinate that with a point in real life, or in 3D space. So basically, when you be able to scan, 100,000, 200,000 points a second, you can build this point cloud off of an active laser or an active sensor system. That differs from photogrammetry because photogrammetry is an algorithm that it's running on photos and estimating these points in space. It's still very accurate for photogrammetry, but there's a little bit more error in that when you're running an algorithm versus an active sensor.
Which companies make LiDAR systems for drones?
So there's only a few companies that build the actual lasers that I'm aware of, or are at least in the front runnings of what's available. We have Livox is kind of on the lower end of lasers, but they're very good for the money. Then you have, I think it's Quanergy makes one, Velodyne, and then Regal. Those are kind of like your laser manufacturers of who's building the actual laser. Hesai is coming out with a new laser that's actually pretty good too. But so you have all these laser companies, and a laser is no good without an IMU and a GPS system and a computer to put all that together. So if you buy just a laser, you're just going to get this random mess of point cloud that doesn't make any sense. So you need an IMU and a GPS, and that will basically figure out where that laser is in space and make your point cloud accurate to the real world.
As a quick follow-up, where do you think most of these are manufactured? In the U.S., or are most assembled or made overseas?
I know Regals are all produced in Austria. Pandars and Livoxes are going to be in China. I'm actually not sure where Velodyne is. I think they might be a U.S.-based company. I don't deal a lot with the Velodynes just because they're mid-range. People either ask for the cheapest thing or the best thing, and Velodyne doesn't do either of them. So,
interesting.
Fair point.
Yes.
Interesting.
So the price has gone down for LiDAR units over the years, especially recently. Do you, first off, why has the price gone down? And do you see it as at one point where we're going to find these on an enterprise unit like the Mavic unit or the Evo 2 type of units, or is that just kind of a dream?
Yeah, so the most expensive part of cheaper LiDAR systems, like I said, the LiveVox is only $1,000 to $2,000 depending on which model you get. The AVI, I think, is around $1,300 or something. But the expensive part of that is actually that IMU, the inertial measurement unit. Basically, that tells it pitch, roll, yaw of where that sensor is in space. And that part is the expensive key to the puzzle. As those come down in price, that's where we're seeing some of this reduction in price is, I mean, like the Rock Robotics and the Recon A systems use the same IMU. And that's what's really driven that cost down is a high quality IMU for less money. So as those units get better and better, as they get smaller and smaller and cheaper, I think we'll see some cost reductions there. On high-end units, once you start getting to the high-end units, everybody wants to keep getting better and better. And as you get better, you get more expensive. So the high-end LiDAR systems have actually gone up in price a little bit, where the low-end stuff is starting to come down.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think I remember a couple of years ago reading about LiDAR pretty much for the first time as it was being used, I think also with drones and airplanes where they were mapping ruins in Latin America, and they were able to see right through the jungle and all the vegetation and basically map out all these buildings that used to be there at one point in time. You're catering to electric utilities, renewables, mapping, and public safety. Like, where does LiDAR fit in? Is that being used in all those four categories, or does that differ? I mean, where do you see the most use cases?
So I guess in renewables, a lot of people are doing the scans of fields that they're going to build either solar panels or wind turbines. They want to do it quickly, so they'll make a topographical map with the LiDAR system. Before they do that, we have one company that uses a LiDAR system to position the aircraft to actually scan each wind turbine blade. So they have a little LiveVox sensor on the aircraft itself for guidance of the flight computer, which is a really cool application of LiDAR. Not necessarily for mapping, but just for autonomous navigation. And then public safety hasn't really gotten into it a whole ton. They're still doing a lot of photogrammetry. I do know that as far as like car crash reconstruction, they've started to use it. I've also had people looking for people burying things underground, whether it be firearms or evidence that they're looking for underground, that they want to do some LiDAR scans for it. That's still fairly hard to detect because you're looking for very fine changes in dirt, in elevations, and that's pretty difficult to detect. But there are people that are doing that to find that. With looking through vegetation, like you mentioned there, there's a big debate on whether the laser pulse is going through the leaves themselves, or if you're just shooting so many laser pulses that you eventually find a hole through the foliage and to the ground. So that's one thing with LiDAR that people debate still. So
interesting.
But I guess as far as the categories there, engineering guys love LiDAR data, so they try to use it every chance they get.
So, yeah. So LiveVox that's with DJI, right? Where does that fit in terms of the quality? Yeah, high end, low end, mid range.
It's definitely on the lower end of the sensor spectrum, especially for cost. But I think the value proposition of the LiveVox is there, where you're not going to get great data, but if all you're looking for is that topographic map, just trying to hit hard surfaces like roads and things, and buildings and doing that, it works great. Like, there's really no reason to spend, that $250,000 on a Regal system when this works as a tool, right? Because getting your ROI back from a $250,000 system takes a little bit longer than getting your ROI back from maybe a $30,000 system. So that's where we're seeing a lot of people wanting to go into these lower end systems is just that ROI and being competitive in the field for pricing. That it just helps them a ton. But they have to know the limitations of what the sensor can and cannot do.
What is the best drone, in your opinion, to use with LiDAR?
So, again, depending on which one you do, if you're doing the LiveVox systems, LiveVox-based systems, The Matrice 300 works just fine. We're getting 30-some minutes of flight time out of that with a LiveVox-based system and a 24-megapixel camera on the back to colorize it. Once you get into heavy lifts, when you're in the Regal size systems, both the FreeFly Alta X and the Prism, Bobby Watt's Prism, has been really good. A lot of people seem to be favoring the Prism right now, just due to the control system. He's got a little bit better controller, I think. And a lot of people are transitioning to that to carry LiDAR. It's also an X8, which helps with the redundancy thing. We had one customer that lost a motor on a Prism already with a LiDAR system on it, and the aircraft flew home just fine. And they landed. They swapped out the arm within a couple minutes. They were back up and flying with a new arm. So it was a really cool system for them to be able to keep going and making money all day.
So before we got started with the show, you shared some photos of a DJI Matrice 300 that was outfitted with LiDAR. That's, I think, one of the drone combinations with LiDAR that you offer. Can you tell us a little bit more about that particular drone?
Yep, so that was the Matrice 300 with the Recon A on it, which is the LiveVox-based Phoenix system. And the workflow for that is very simple. It's got a little flash drive on the side of it that records all the data from the camera, the IMU, and the LiDAR system, and all the GPS data. You have a base station on the ground recording Rhinex. You click start on your phone, you take off and fly a mission back and forth. And then when you land, you hit shutdown. You stick the flash drive in the side of the computer and open a program called PC Master, and then select the files, hit process, and you get a LAS file at the end. So it's a very simple system. A lot of people are liking it because they can send it with pilots that they can train in a day versus doing a week-long training class. You know how to use it a couple times, and they're off to the races out collecting data for you. And scalability is huge. So when you can buy 10 of these Recon A's for the cost of a Regal system, and outfit 10 crews, you can make 10 times more money when you got that many people out there. So they can just hit so many more customer sites that it makes them more money.
So from a business perspective, that should be a really attractive offering, basically, if people are looking to expand into the LiDAR part of the drone business. Yep,
and again, you just have to know the limitations of what the sensor can do. You don't want to overpromise to your customer and say, hey, we can get 1 to 2 centimeter resolution because we have LiDAR. It's definitely a different data product than a Regal, but as long as your customers are okay with that, and that's meeting their minimum specifications, why would you use something more expensive?
So with smaller drones, and I'm thinking about the Skydio drone and the Mavic series, for instance, with those drones becoming better and better in avoiding obstacles, do you think that, and at the same time we're seeing LiDAR become smaller and less expensive, do you think that at some point we might see LiDAR incorporated in smaller drones like an Autel Evo 2 or 3 at that point, who knows, or a Mavic, to use for obstacle avoidance for those kind of drones, or is that impossible?
No, it's definitely possible. I think there's a couple companies right now working on that for obstacle avoidance. There's a new public safety drone coming out that has a LiDAR system already in it for doing indoor public safety jobs. And that's going to have a little bit of a, kind of like the LiDAR system in the iPhone. It's not going to be high resolution. It's not going to be a mapping grade. But it is something that it can actually detect what's in front of it. And avoid it, similar to, I guess, how cars are doing it now.
Yeah.
What does insurance look like for LiDAR units? And I say this, besides what I would guess is an additional cost, what kind of, do companies that offer drone insurance packages also tack this on, like add this on to protect in case the drone crashes and damages the unit as well? Is that even a thing?
Yeah, so actually it's kind of funny you brought that up. We have a lot of people that say that their biggest issue with buying a LiDAR system is the cost of the insurance. So we've been working with an insurance company to get that cost significantly reduced. What a lot of people were doing is they're insuring the drone and the LiDAR as a drone package, right? Well, drones right now have a very high percentage, I guess, how do I want to say that? Very high percentage of the cost of the drone is insurance. So if you can get them just to insure the drone without the LiDAR, and then you insure the LiDAR separately as a mobile scanner, we can get the costs way down on that.
Do you mind sharing which company is allowing you to do this, or is that confidential?
So Horizon Agency here in Minnesota, they're in Eden Prairie right down the road. They take care of all of our insurance. So if people wanted to take a look at how to structure their insurance a little bit better, that they're the guys to talk to over there.
Oh, interesting. Thanks.
So and I've been working with them since, early on, 2014, 2015 on drone insurance. So they're definitely familiar with it.
Incredible. Thank you.
Is there a trend that you see at the moment in the industry that either you enjoy or just a trend that you're noticing?
The biggest trend is people are trying to figure out how to scale these solutions, right? So we've proven out that, buying a Phantom 4, you can do photogrammetry and get these maps that are incredible. We've proven out that public safety can purchase a drone and use it and protect people's property and lives and all that thing. The biggest issue now is how do you scale that across multiple people that maybe aren't on that leading edge of wanting to be a drone pilot. They just want to go to work, do their job, and go home. Now you have to train that person how to be a drone pilot. There's a lot of that going on, and then there's other companies that are trying to figure out, like, okay, we don't want people that are doing other things to learn how to fly a drone. We want them just to keep doing what they're doing. And how do we get a drone team internally in our company that can go out and hit these sites economically at scale and not just do one-off projects anymore. So that's been one of the big trends right now, is how do we scale these solutions across the country and across the globe and keep it be economical for the end user. So.
Yep.
So there is a bit of a supply chain crisis, and just anecdotally, it took 6 weeks to fix my car to replace parts that they could not find for a while. So my question to you is this impacting your business with getting certain parts that you need for your clients, or do you see that being an issue going forward in the future?
About 2 months ago, I would have said it wasn't an issue yet. It definitely has hit now. Even just getting stuff on FedEx, we're doing 2-day and overnight shipments to people that need stuff right away, and it's taking a week to 2 weeks to go on overnight, supposedly. So we've got customers that are like, hey, we broke something, we need parts right away, and we have them here in our warehouse, but when they're out in Colorado doing a job, we have to overnight it to them. And it's just everything's taking a long time to get moved around. So shipping delays are the number one thing. It's not even the manufacturing. Manufacturers have this stuff in stock, whether it's in China or here in the U.S. It's just been trying to get it moved to where it needs to be.
And then apart from supply chain issues, of course, we also have to deal with COVID-19. Has that impacted your business in terms of being able to deal with customers, have demonstrations, do in-person meetings, all that stuff? Yeah,
I mean, it definitely has changed a little bit of how we work, but we're no longer really doing a lot of trade shows. We're doing a lot more phone calls, Zoom meetings, that sort of thing. But people seem to be pretty open to that. It almost makes it easier that we don't have to spend money on traveling, and everybody just wants to do webcam stuff. So has it impacted us negatively? I don't think so. At the end of the day, we're selling flying robots that don't need human interaction, really. So from that aspect, it's kind of nice. More people want to implement this stuff because it takes less manpower to do some things. We just keep going on like business as usual. We never shut down. So
it kind of fits our industry, I guess, unmanned. So there's no,
Yep.
We at the PiXL Drone Show, we haven't even had one episode where the three of us were actually live together to host it, which I don't know if we'll ever get to that. It'd be nice, but we haven't been able to do that, obviously.
I want to go back to the Matrice 600 a little bit. When we talked about the 300, do you think the Matrice 600 is due for a new version or an overhaul? Because it's end of life now.
Yeah, so DJI did end of life it. They've been trying to end of life that aircraft for at least 2 years. They've been saying that, hey, we're going to cancel it. We're not going to build anymore. And they finally did that. So the biggest issue we've been running into is batteries for our legacy fleets that we've been managing. That they want to extend the life of their M600s another year or two, and they know that they have failing batteries. The M600's batteries supply has been constrained at DJI, so If you guys have M600s and you need batteries, I would definitely suggest trying to get something in the near future. And then as well as any other parts you think you may need. A lot of the components have already been discontinued, like the Lightbridge 2 system. You can't really buy anymore, and some other parts like that.
So do you think DJI is focusing enough on the professional and enterprise markets, or is there another drone manufacturer, maybe Otel, just throwing that out as an example, that might be more serious or putting more effort towards innovation when it comes to the professional and enterprise fields?
Yeah, Autel is kind of one of those companies that everybody roots for, but nobody's really buying them at huge scale yet. You know, the product's great. It works good. You know, can't really complain about it too much, but you know, DJI just has a stronghold in that market. And one of the things Autel's really struggling with is that they're built in Shenzhen, China as well. So they can't get around that US made thing quite so easy. They do have that FLIR model that says made in the US, but that's just because the FLIR camera and the case are made here in the US. But the actual aircraft is still Chinese. DJI with the M300 still hands down has the most integrated solution. That it just, you open the box, you turn it on, and it works, and that's what people are expecting. When you go to these other manufacturers that are building off of PixHawk based systems and the Cube based systems, you know, you have to do your own integrations generally, which we try to help out with, but they're not perfect. They're not like DJI where you just plug in a camera and it auto recognizes what camera it is and configures all your settings for that camera. There's a big push for that. I know that's what Auterion is working on their Skynode, to integrate with a lot of these manufacturers of these aircraft that are trying to compete with DJI. I think once that becomes full scale and pushed out to all these manufacturers, we'll start seeing something that's actually getting to the point of where DJI might be. So like the FreeFly Astro is going to be one of the first large-scale manufactured drones with that Auterion system in it. And they're going to have the auto detection for what payload you have and a little bit more integration into the camera, which are the two key things that most people find that's lacking in these airframes.
Do you think that Auterion in combination with FreeFly, would that, for instance, be the first time we actually see some real competition for DJI?
I think so. The Astro, while it's been delayed by, you know, a year now that it's been out and being advertised, and people still only have just the airframes if they have anything at all. I'm told that the camera system is supposed to be available in January, maybe February. But once that camera system comes out where we can just plug into their smart dovetail, that camera system, and it auto recognizes it, and we have control of the camera, like ISO, shutter speed, you know, your focus. The tap to focus is a big thing for a lot of companies. Especially when they're doing power line inspections, they want to tap on the power line and get it, you know, focused in, or at least be able to control manual focus to hit that. That's just not available with the current airframes out there except DJI.
So we've spoken about the larger drones like an M600, M300, FreeFly systems, all larger, more expensive drones. If we shift gears and we look at smaller drones like the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, Evo 2, Evo 2 Dual, the Mavic 3 now, how do they fit into the commercial drone world, if you will, like your kind of customers? I mean, I know, well, let's say wedding photographers might use them as well, but I mean, your kind of customers, where do they fit in, and what kind of role do those drones, the smaller ones, play?
Yeah, they really fit in that scale play, right? So if you can take if you're using an M300 and the H20T, let's say, and you have that thermal camera, and all you're using really is the thermal camera to do solar panel inspections and map solar fields, that's, you know, it's a fairly expensive setup. You could buy 3 or 4 Mavics and outfit crews with them and send them wherever you need to, and it has the same resolution thermal camera, and you're able just to hit a lot more stuff and get that ROI a lot faster. And that's where we see people, you know, really wanting to scale when they have a very specific use case that those smaller airframes fit. Then it's a no-brainer to put them with crews, I think.
I wanted to kind of bring the conversation to being a reseller and dealing possibly with DJI. Recently, DJI announced that they were going to sell directly to the customer, kind of bypassing the resellers. Is that something that that you felt kind of being a pain, or how does that affect you?
Yeah, the direct sales, I guess when I first saw it, I was not surprised. DJI does like to sell directly to their customers. They like to know who their customers are, which they don't really get with the resellers. So I see why they're doing it. I think our customer base, they have no interest in going on the internet and purchasing the units right from any manufacturer, because they just don't get that level of support that, that all of my customers have my cell phone number, so they can just pick up the phone. They call me on weekends, nights, whatever, if they're having an issue, and we can usually get it resolved over the phone, or at least make a plan on how to get it resolved as quick as possible. They're just not going to get that level of service right from a website. So I haven't seen it affect us, and I believe DJI even marks up the Enterprise series slightly above what we're able to sell them for on their website, but I haven't looked lately.
So I know also DJI has changed their margins or the requirements to be a DJI reseller. And is this something that you think is an indication of what is going on at DJI?
Yeah, I think DJI is realizing, especially on the enterprise side, they're definitely enacting a little bit more training requirements, or trying to at least. That's what they keep asking for. They're trying to get rid of, the guys that own tire shops selling drones out the back, right? Like that was very prevalent in the early days of the drone industry. Is anybody who's remotely interested in a drone signed up to be a reseller, and now they're weeding through all that stuff, and definitely the companies that take that support to the next level are the ones that are sticking around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense.
So DJI started to sell drones directly to enterprise customers. Do you think that was perhaps just to communicate a price publicly so that people kind of know where those price points are for different drones, or you think they might have had a different reason to do this?
Yeah, I think there was some issues with some larger companies that may have been trying to take advantage of pricing in both directions, right? We got people that willing to make nothing, and there's people that are trying to make all year's salary in one sale, right? So I think it was all over the board. DJI put it on their website probably just to kind of even that out of like, hey, here's a baseline at least, so everybody kind of has a rough idea of what to expect.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, where do you think resellers add value? Is it training you offer, or superior customer service compared to big manufacturers?
Yeah, I think it's just having somebody to pick up the phone. Like they can pick up the phone, call me, or call any reseller that actually is good at what they do, I guess, and get answers of what's going on in the industry, what are people seeing, what sensors are available, and give maybe an unbiased opinion of like, hey, what would you do for solving this problem, right? Like, I need to go, look at a cell tower and I need to stay 100 feet away from it. What's the best aircraft that'll get me something like that? And then we can come out and do demos. We can consult with them on what the best aircraft will be for that. Whereas you don't get that with a website. And a manufacturer is just not going to have the bandwidth to be able to send people all over the country to do these demos.
So one of the trends we've seen in the drone industry is that drones, of course, they don't only just become smaller and more affordable, they also become more autonomous. They're better in avoiding obstacles. We saw when Skydio came out, that drone pretty much flies itself. Do you think that as the drone industry progresses and these drones are getting more and more capable, that the future for 107 or Part 107 pilots is under threat, that at some point we will have drones in boxes that just fly fully autonomously?
I think there's definitely a push of people that want to do that. I don't think it's anything in the near future that will be completely autonomous without a pilot on site. We do have a couple companies that are working on, complete autonomous AI, like that one that had the LIDAR system on top. All you have to do is press go, and then there's an emergency stop button. That's the only two controls you really have. You can go into override and fly it manually, but they're training people of like, hey, override's like last-ditch effort to make sure you don't hit anything. They just want you to hit start, stop, and that's it. So there's definitely a push to go to that, but I don't think it's really a threat to the 107 program. I think there are plenty of applications that do require, a trained operator to actually fly these things and get the data that they need.
So we ask every guest this question: what is your stance on remote ID? Is it overreaching or is it overdue? What do you think?
Yeah, remote ID is one of those things that, like, I can definitely see why the government wants to do it. In the airplanes that we fly, light aircraft, we have ADS-B already. So, for me, it doesn't bother me. If you're not doing anything illegal or something you shouldn't do, my policy is always like, I don't really care who sees what we're doing. I definitely understand that there's some people that have privacy concerns with what they're doing, especially on infrastructure in the U.S. But yeah, remote ID to me, I think it's a good idea. It just holds everybody accountable and
Any concerns, though, about your location being broadcast? I mean, do you think maybe there's some room to adjust some of these things a little bit? I see one of the biggest concerns, especially for women, is, having your physical location broadcast as you're flying. I mean, is it good as it is, or what do you think could maybe be changed or left out altogether, if anything?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a perfect answer for that. I don't think anybody has a perfect answer for that because, on one hand, you have people that are doing things that aren't legal. We just got a call from a sheriff that said one of the drones we sold was used to drop narcotics into a prison, and they were trying to track down who owned it. So we helped them with that. And so remote ID for something like that would work wonderfully. But yeah, like you said, for people who don't want to be broadcasting their location, because I have seen stories of people, like neighbors that thought that they own the airspace for the whole neighborhood and come out and are all upset. You don't want that system to be used against the operators either. So I don't think anybody has a perfect answer for that, and that's just something that needs to be worked on with time. And I'm not sure if that's something like, maybe there's a 30-minute delay on live data to the public, or an hour delay or something like that. And then maybe you only give access to law enforcement agencies real time, maybe. Or how ADS-B does it is you're only legally required to have the transmitter on if you're within 30 miles of an international airport, or a Class B airport. So that's, there's ways to do it. It's just, I think it's going to take some time for them to kind of iron out what the best way forward is. But, there's issues of doing it both ways.
You mentioned helping a sheriff to track down who was flying the drone, dropping off narcotics in the prison. Were you able to do that, or did DJI get involved in trying to find those folks, or what happened?
So everything's tracked with a serial number. So DJI knows where they sold the drone to. So it was tracked back to our store. And then it was sold on to somebody else, and then they knew who had it, and so they track it back from DJI. So they had an email address of who activated it, and then they had who they sold it to originally. So they just backtracked all that information, and it took them a couple weeks to find it, but they did track them down. So.
Wow. Since we're talking about regulation, BV loss is kind of the next big thing the FAA is working on. Do you see your customers asking for BV loss or being limited at the moment by not being able to do BV loss? Is this something that's going to be a big deal?
Yeah, beyond visual line of sight is definitely the holy grail of the drone industry at this point. And I think beyond visual line of sight is going to come from a lot of that remote ID. Just knowing, hey, the aircraft's here, so any other aircraft can avoid it. Because that scene avoid's really hard when you start getting into smaller and smaller aircraft. But beyond visual line of sight, I think is going to be the real key to enabling widespread use of these large fleets and doing large area mapping. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, honestly. There's too many safety issues currently that need to be addressed first. There's definitely some groups that are doing some really good work in advancing that research for it. Like the Vantis guys up in North Dakota that are working on that beyond visual line of sight solution and building out the airspace for that. I think they're doing really great work. I really hope that they succeed in that because they'll make the industry so much bigger and more accessible to these larger companies.
So one of the things we heard earlier this week is that there might, I mean, who knows, these are all rumors still, but there might be a new DJI Inspire 3 coming next year. I don't know if an Inspire is a drone that you typically sell a lot, but if that's the case, what would you be looking for? Like, what kind of improvements would you expect DJI to bring in a Inspire 3 over the current model, the 2?
Yeah, there's always rumors of DJI, the next DJI machine, right? Like, I'm sure somebody's already saying that there's going to be a Mavic 4. Well, yeah, 4 comes after 3, so probably. But from an Inspire 3 standpoint, if DJI were to make one, I think that the X9 camera has gotten a lot of people intrigued on their handheld Ronin 4D gimbal. I think that's what a lot of people would like to see on an aircraft. And if they build a Inspire 3 that's, maybe a slightly larger, slightly longer battery life, I think that there would be a lot of people in the film industry that would be very interested in that. Our target market really isn't into that Inspire category for us, at least.
DJI shortly, well, I don't know about shortly, but they did release a Mavic 2 Enterprise. Do you see a Mavic 3 Enterprise happening?
I assume they will. The biggest issue with the Mavic 3 right now for our enterprise customers is the DJI Fly app and no SDK available. So, I've had customers that they pre-ordered Mavic 3s and then got them, and as soon as they saw it was used DJI Fly, they just put it back in the box and kept using their Mavic 2s. You can't do waypoint missions yet. You can't do basically all the stuff that DJI Pilot allows you to do in the missions, and that's what a lot of people are looking for.
I still can't believe they apply DJI Fly to, I mean, let's face it, Mavic 3 is priced for people who are most likely professionals and the very few that have the disposable income to have it as a hobby. But I wonder if Lychee or something will become available in the future as something that's compatible. But either way, I lamented in my review that they took a consumer app that they developed for the DJI mini drone and debuted with that and stuck it on a drone that's essentially up to 5 times as much. So.
Do you think they made a mistake with the DJI Fly app using that for the Mavic 3? I mean, I know when I spoke to DJI folks when they launched the Mavic Mini, they said they couldn't move forward with the DJI Go 4 app because it was just too hard to maintain and it had to be compatible with older drones, and then that just didn't work with newer models. Do you think they made a mistake? Like, do we need a real professional app to use the Mavic 3 for commercial purposes?
Going to bet that DJI has that app either under development or they'll release an SDK to allow third-party developers to build that sort of app. DJI is just notorious to have a 6-month, 12-month delay on releasing the SDK for new aircraft. So I think with time we'll see some of that develop, especially if they come out with a Mavic 3 Enterprise. I'm sure it's not going to be anytime soon, just due to trying to get those apps to work out. And that they just released the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced not too long ago as well. And that's still a drone that sells very well. So they really are kind of pushing this Mavic 3 platform, and they're probably going to prove it out first in that consumer space and then start modifying it with other cameras.
It's almost like you get the feeling that DJI was rushing to get this drone to the market before the fourth quarter holiday shopping season. Like, some of the features weren't ready. That they use the DJI Fly app. Like, for a drone where the most expensive version is almost $5,000, you expect more, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe they're taking a page out of Tesla's playbook there. Tesla releases a really good car with hardware-wise, and they, the software might not work very good, but that's what over-the-air updates are for. So maybe they figured that their hardware is good enough. They know what they're doing in the hardware space, and they'll work on the software as time goes on. So maybe it's a drone that just gets better with time.
I hope so. It's a good comparison that you make. I mean, I always thought that DJI was trying to mimic Apple, but actually maybe they're trying to be more like Tesla when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I agree. I want to kind of switch gear and talk about the blue sUAS and the Chinese-made drones. And is this a discussion that you have quite a bit with your customers when they come in and they have maybe a concern about data security?
Yeah, all the time. So we actually just got off the phone a few hours ago with somebody that keeps saying that they need a American-made blue UAS solution. The downfall to that is there is no M300 direct replacement that is American-made. So at the end of the day, when they say, well, we need it to work exactly like an M300, but we need it made in the U.S., they'll work around the U.S. part to get the M300. They're not willing to work around the shortcomings of the blue UAS right now to meet that spec. We've got a few customers that have actually requested waivers from utility companies and such to do that. So that they can still operate Chinese aircraft on this infrastructure. They have stringent security protocols in place to do that, but it definitely took them a while to get that approved. But that's definitely a conversation that people have all the time of like, well, I really would like a US-made M300, and it just doesn't exist yet. And that's why everybody's rooting for the Astro, Free Fly's Astro. Watts has the blue Prism coming out called Prism Sky, and that should have Arterion in it. So everybody's really excited for these new aircraft. They're just not quite there yet or not in production yet. So,
I guess my follow-up, I was going to say my follow-up question to this is what do we need to do as a country to get to that point, to get to the point where we can compete with the Matrice 300 and build that in the U.S.? Is it just a matter of time at this stage?
Yeah, I think Aterion's going to be the first company to kind of push us in that direction as far as, how they're thinking about it, right? They're making this ecosystem. And that's really what DJI did a really good job of, was make this DJI ecosystem of, we'll produce an M300 and we'll build an H20, an XT2, all these different payloads, P1, L1, and we'll allow people to use one tool to kind of mix and match, and everything auto-identifies with what sensor you put on, changes all the menus for you for all the settings, and it just works when you turn it on.
That's the Apple playbook right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with these other manufacturers, they just don't have the bandwidth, right? Like DJI's got 6,000 engineers that work for them. It's really tough to compete with that when you're a small U.S. company with maybe 20 to 100 employees. And then they have to do the economy of scale. Now that they built this really cool drone, they find out that in order to produce 10, it costs them a lot of money. If they could produce, 10,000, they might be able to bring that cost way down where more people would buy it. But that's been the biggest issue right now is, the engineering scale and the being able to produce enough units to get the cost down.
Yeah, so investment.
It's pretty much like
we
the
need
chicken and the egg
investors.
story, right? I mean, if you don't make enough, then they're too expensive, and if they're too expensive, you're not selling enough, so therefore you don't have to make more. I mean, do you think blue sUAS? Do you think they are too expensive, and do you wonder if they can actually be produced at scale in the United States, or is that just a dream?
I mean, I think they can get to it. Look at Foxconn and some of these big chip manufacturers. They're starting to put factories back here in the U.S. because of the shipping issues. They're figuring out how to do it. They just have to produce in enough scale to make that cost effective. And I think that's one of the big things that this industry is lacking right now is the ability to produce the blue UAS in the scale required to get the price to where it needs to be for consumers.
In terms of drones potentially being a security issue, do you think that, like, for instance, the U.S. government should help and make it possible for American manufacturers to start producing drones at scale so that we keep all that technology and knowledge in-house and not rely on Chinese-made drones?
They're already sort of doing that with the tariffs. That's the whole idea of the tariff, is to make the Chinese goods more expensive to give U.S. products a competitive advantage there. But at the end of the day, you can still pay a 25% tariff on a DJI product and be significantly cheaper than the next thing that doesn't work as well. So that's really been the hard part. I'm really rooting for a lot of these U.S. drone companies to produce these products in a scale that makes it affordable. And then once they start doing that, they can hire more engineers and start competing on a level that really makes sense. But yeah, I think that's just where the state of the industry is right now.
So, is your business growing?
Yes. Yeah. We're always trying to grow, and we're picking up more fleets to manage. And yeah, I guess we're just always working with more companies. So,
physically, do you plan on expanding to more locations outside of Minnesota ever?
I guess I don't really think so. We don't really have a huge need to have more physical locations. Most everything people, ship here and get work done, and then we just ship it right back. But otherwise, we do have the ability to travel around the country too. We can either get in the car or an airplane and be at anybody's location in a few hours. So, having physical locations all around the country just not really required.
Got it.
Wow. I'm looking at the time and I see we've talked for 52 minutes. It feels like we just started like 10 minutes ago. It's been a really very interesting conversation. I love the depth of knowledge that you have about all these topics. But as we get closer to the end, I do have a question that we ask all of our guests, and it might be difficult for you because you probably fly quite a bit. But what's your favorite drone to fly out there?
Oh man, it really depends on the application, but I think right now, kind of the coolest drone to fly is probably the Prism with a LIDAR system on it. Just the 8 motors and the noise that it makes, and how smooth Bobby's been able to tune that aircraft to make it fly. I think it's one of the best flying aircraft on the market, whether it's DJI or not. And then I guess behind that, Alta X and M300 would be the next two, as far as what would be my favorites.
Cool.
I kind of love that question. I mean, we've done more than 30 episodes now, and at every show at the end, we ask, okay, what's your favorite drone? And we get all these different answers, right? I mean, some people are like, oh, I want an FPV drone, or like in your case, an M300 or something. I think it very much depends on what industry you're in and how you've been using drones, of course. But it's cool to hear such a variety in all these drones that people pick as their favorite. So, yeah, we've almost come to an hour. So thank you so much for being on the show, Logan. And again, thank you for being available on such short notice. It was for sure a pleasure talking to you. For everybody else out there, thank you for listening and watching. If you want more information about Logan, you can find him very easily on Facebook. I mean, it's pretty hard to not run into him at some point if you're active in the drone groups and communities. Of course, you can also go to his website, vertexunmanned.com. So if you search for vertexunmanned.com, you'll find him for sure. Thank you for being a guest, Logan.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And for everybody else who's listening or watching to this episode of the PiXL Drone Show, please share it with your friends and family and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a great deal. We air all our episodes on Tuesday morning, and we're working hard now to make sure that we got the pipeline filled for the holiday season so that you guys have something to listen to and to watch. It's, of course, available on all the different podcast platforms as well as on YouTube, where we'll share some of the pictures the photos that Logan shared with us about the M300 outfitted with LIDAR. So thank you very much for listening or watching, and we'll see you again next Tuesday.